Hi everyone, my name's Mark Gregory. I'm the author of this new constructed language called Sikwenchu. And if I may, please, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about it. I'm a linguist in a certain way, like many of you. I study lots of languages. I study French, Spanish, Japanese, and Chinese. I've been doing it on and off for years. I know how difficult it is, the challenges, the many, many hours involved in trying to become good at a language. I'm familiar with Esperanto and many others. But this one in particular is pretty unique. And it's the reason I've come to you today to try and let you hear a little bit about it. In fact, I've written another language before in the past about 4 years ago, and I never really made much mention of it because it really didn't change things too much. But in this particular case, Sikwenchu I do call a breakthrough, and for good reason. And this is a one of two volumes that I've just published, and the other one will publish in about 3 to 4 weeks from now. And the key thing is the language is designed to be learned. You learn to begin speaking in about 4 to 7 weeks. That's right, I'm not kidding you. 4 to 7 weeks, not 5 to 10 years, 4 to 7 weeks. And that includes a large vocabulary to go along with it. It's like, well, no, you might say, well, that's impossible. It's like, well, I've been working on it for 6 years, and this is my second language that I've written, and I have studied many languages, so I kind of have a fairly good idea of what I'm doing. And it was kind of a breakthrough when I finally figured it out after all these years. And so I'd like to show you a little bit about it because I suspect there will be business opportunities forthcoming because as I offer the two books, there will be then a proficiency test associated with it geared towards becoming a certified Sikwenchu language instructor. And I don't want to, say, oh no, you've spent years and years learning Esperanto and all these others. I understand it. And I'm not going to stop studying my other languages as well. In fact, I was just studying Japanese and Chinese this afternoon down at the cafe. I still love languages, but this one's designed to get hundreds of millions of us speaking in a very short period of time. So let me give you a quick idea, please. All right, let me see. I have, okay. So this is part of the book. And a couple things. This only take a couple minutes actually, just to kind of give you the basics. So first of all, there's two people involved. There's Yanara Sa and Medivali. And really, these gals, they work together, but really what they are is they're memory jogs. So Yanara Sa is really just a memory jog to let you know that those are the pronouns. So ya, na, ta, and sa represent I, you, he, and she. So there is consistency in the pronunciation here for starters, all right? And then medievally, the other gal, they're just tense markers. And what I mean by that, these are just, instead of directly conjugating the verb in Sikwenchu, I just put tense markers in front of the verb, somewhat like it works in Chinese, where you don't conjugate the verb. I know all about the complexities of conjugating verbs in French and Spanish and the thousands of different things you have to try and remember, even if you've memorized all the grammar rules for conjugation. But let me see how this works. So there's I actually had solved this particular problem a number of years ago when I wrote my first language, but I didn't solve the problem of memorizing thousands of nouns and verbs. Okay, so in this case, so Yanara sa would be she, and then the tense mark of me represents the future tense. So there's me, and the verb for to go is chu. The reason I picked that was because it correlates closely with the Chinese verb chu, which is to go as well, right? So she will go is just sa mi chu, and she went is the simple past tense is di, so sadi chu, she went. And then when you phrase your questions, you would phrase them like you ask, like you reply. So it's sadi chu, did she go? Okay, in the same vein, you can use vi, and vi you can just think of that as the have tense for now. So if I was to use sa vi chu, it'd be has she gone, or savichu, she has gone, right? So everything works very closely like that. So the verb never changes, thank goodness. And so there's another verb. It's also derived from Chinese. It's called shui in this case. It's not quite the same pronunciation as in Chinese, but it's a simplified pronunciation. It's spelled S-H-W-E. E is an S sound. So it would be Sami Shue would be she will study. Sadi Shue, she studied. Savi Shue, she has studied. It's very simple. This particular first volume, if you've noticed on here, is first volume is Essential Grammar. It's designed to be learned in about 3 to 4 weeks. It's over 100 pages, approximately right in there. But it takes me about 2 hours to read it now. Once I've written it, it takes about 3 to 4 hours when you first do it. And if you do it 2, 3 times, I estimate about 10 hours to learn the grammar. I mean, that is saying complex sentences. I would have, I had, I should have, she will have been. I mean, the whole gamut of simplicity bundled in this one little volume. It's very, very quick to learn. All right, so, but that's not the only thing. The second thing that I was not able to solve in the first language that I wrote was the, how do you solve the problem of memorizing thousands of nouns? Because when I think about all the other languages I know, it's like, how do I? There's always like one word that's missing. I know you know this, right? It's like, oh, what was that word? And then you start beating around the bush and you say, well, yeah, what is that thing over there that's next to that thing? And it's just like, it just drives me crazy. So, but I solved it this time around. And I'll give you an example of that as well. So let's go down to page number 28. And this is just one categorization method. Now, Sikwenchu means, sequen means sequence, and chu is just a play on words. In Japanese, you can append chu, which, well, since chu means to go in this language, well, go, you append go to like Nihon, become Nihongo for language, right, the Japanese language. So that's just a play on words. But what I do is I categorize nouns and verbs, adjectives, adverbs, by following a sequence of patterns, procedures, sounds, events, vowel pronunciations, etc. A whole series of things the way I do it. And so I not only categorize them and apply a keyword to it, but then I encode the word somehow, either usually through vowels or through numerics. And I'll show you the vowel portion. So this is one of the very basic ones, these adverbs. Now, so this particular group is pretty basic. So we have always, and at the other end, never, and then in the middle, sometimes, right? And then between always and sometimes is usually, and between sometimes and never is rarely. So those are that's a fairly clever grouping right here. And the only thing I do is, since these are frequency of occurrence events, I just use this FRQ K sound, right? So and I apply the standard vowel set. There's many vowel sets in Sikwenchu, so all vowels are very consistent in the pronunciation. So it just becomes frock, freck, freak, froke, and frook. Now, remembering this, I assure you, is far simpler than remembering 5 disparate words, no matter what language. In fact, if you're trying to think of one of the languages you study, can you remember all these right now? It can be very hard, right? But in this case, frock, freck, freak, froke, and frook represent always, usually, sometimes, rarely, and never. So on average, I'm compressing things from like about 7 to 9 to 1, meaning that each group, some are groups of 5, some 6, some 9, and so instead of learning, say, 700 nouns, you would only learn maybe 100 key words. And by the time you learn the key words, then it's much easier to logically go through the group in your own mind to figure out which one it is. And I'll show you that in other lessons as I go along, because I'm going to be posting a lot of Sikwenchu language lessons on one of my Sikwenchu YouTube video channels. All right, so that's pretty straightforward. In fact, let's look at this sentence. Here's kwai. Kwai is why in this. And so na is you, because that's ya, na, ta, sa, ya, na, ta, sa, so na. So why you always, and here's the past tense marker, di, chu, why did you always go to Zhongguo, China? Then for countries, I use the actual sound, the pronunciation of that particular country as I go. So like in Japan is Nihon, right? And on like that. So it's very basic, and it's available right now in the Amazon store. Let me see if I have that up here, right there. If you're interested in taking a look, or if you have friends or family or somebody who you know that's really interested in it. But think of it as this, please. I didn't even promote my previous language because I knew it really hadn't done anything great. But honest to goodness, 4 to 7 weeks to start speaking the language. Believe it or not, after only 8 weeks of having written the first two volumes, and I'm almost done with the second one right now. It's due out at the first week of January. I can already express myself far better in Sikwenchu than I can in French, Japanese, Spanish, and Chinese. Maybe French might be a little bit equal like that. It's because the grammar rules are so simple that I can just wing it, and then I can remember the volume of nouns that I remember already is unbelievable because of the categorization and the encoding. So please take a look. I wouldn't say it otherwise. If I didn't think it was really something great, I would never call something a breakthrough if it wasn't anything that I thought was like that. I'm a completely modest, humble individual, but I find it so important that it really could enable hundreds of millions of us to learn to communicate with each other in a very short period of time. All right. And I know you know how long it takes to study a language, and I know how much work you've had to put into learning Esperanto as well. It's just a ton of work for any language. But I'm not discouraging you from continuing with Esperanto, just like I don't discourage anybody from learning any other language. In fact, beyond the French, Spanish, Japanese, and Chinese that I attempt to speak, I'm also going to take up Vietnamese and Hindi in the future as well. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video.